Righty, welcome everyone. It is week 10 and this is our careers week in Prep Skills, and we're always very, very lucky to be joined by a special guest. And this term we have Debbie, who is one of the career consultants from the Seeking New Careers and Development team. So Debbie is the expert in this area and I will simply be the chat lady today. So if you have any questions, anything you want to put in the chat, I will be checking it. And I will be asking those of Debbie. So I'll hand over to Debbie to take on the lecture. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Bree. All right, let me try share again and hopefully everything still works. Make sure all my bits and pieces are where they are. Excellent. All right. Thanks very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's been a while since I've been in a STEPS lecture for a little while, so it's really nice. So as Bree said, my name's Debbie. I'm based on the Rockhampton campus. But we do have staff across a lot of our campuses. So pretty much we have a staff member in Gladstone, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne as well. So we do have staff across the campuses that you can access, and all of this, obviously all of our services are also accessible online as well. So at any stage, feel free to connect in with our team. So what we're going to cover off on today, we're going to do a bit of an introduction to career development and what it is and why it's important. We're going to look at career influences and influencers and get an understanding of what and whom might be influencing your career choices. We're also going to have a look at the DOTS career development framework and get an understanding of the 4 fundamental components of the career planning process. We're going to explore career barriers and see if we can identify potential barriers, and also consider some of the supports that you might be able to tap into to overcome some of those hurdles, and explore the importance of lifelong career development planning and why we need to revisit our plans from time to time, or potentially have multiple plans as well. So let me see if I can turn this on. And what I'd like you to try is to annotate on the screen. If you could represent your career to date using a single line, what would it look like?
Everyone can't remember, you've usually got the annotate button. It's like a little green sort of pencil button. It's in the corner of my screen, down the left hand.
Perfect, Keisha. Keisha's got it all sorted.
Good job.
Tristan.
I don't know if this was on purpose, but Dean's is almost a cat down there.
Might be some unconsciousness things filtering through there. Angus is helping out by the looks.
Thanks, Angus. Really made that into a cat.
All right, thanks very much. And certainly I think what you're showing there is definitely a true indication of what career plans often look like. Often it's a case of, I think there's a misconception that the typical career journey is a linear one, that you make one choice and your career planning is done and dusted. It's that one and done kind of mentality. But the reality is that it is certainly more like a squiggle. So certainly what you've reflected on screen is certainly correct. There's multiple ups and downs. There can be many twists and turns. And for that reason, its career development plan is not one that you make once and never revisit. It's a case of having to constantly revisit your career planning process. So having a good understanding of the importance of planning and revisiting your plans can certainly help you understand your career and course and unit options that are most suitable to you. They can help you navigate that world of work. It allows you to get an understanding of the implications and consequences of career-related choices and decisions. It can influence your confidence and increase your confidence in career planning and the choices that you make. Can give you an understanding of the multiple pathways and options that are available to you, and it certainly provides that opportunity for career growth as well. Oh, now let me see if I can clear my annotations off.
The same thing, so it's might end up just dropping it back again.
I can have a go, Debbie, if it's fine.
Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. All right. So lifelong career development can be described as an individual learning across the lifespan and a form of recurring education. It's an ongoing learning that can result both in academic qualifications as well as informal learning that occurs on the job. So lifelong career development is a concept that is considered a holistic process. It is influenced by many factors that combine to shape the significance and the nature of work across the lifespan of an individual. So lifelong career development is not simply about work or job-related interests, but instead should be viewed holistically as a complex process of managing life, learning, work across your lifespan, and is linked to personal change and the construction of identity. In life, we encounter many changes to our plans, changes such as marriage, promotion, occupation changes, moving to a new town or city. Maybe you've been through a redundancy. Some people may have retired and come back to work, illness, even becoming a parent or carer. All of these things can result in a need to revisit our career plans. So as individuals, the aim is to be self-directed, building the capacity to manage your career with an awareness of the many factors that influence career decisions. Lifelong career development is an ever-evolving process of constructing your self-concept. So throughout your life, not only are you in a state of constant transition within yourself, but the world of opportunities is also in a state of constant change as well. So understanding the need for lifelong career development will help you deal with those transitions. So give some thought to the transitions that you've already encountered to this point in your life already. So you've transitioned from being a child to an adolescent through to an adult. You might have gone from being single to being married and maybe now even a parent or even a grandparent. You've transitioned from primary school to secondary school and now on to university studies. You've gone from study to work and maybe back to study. Changes in the labour market and how that's changed your employment over time. And even things like changes in technology and how that's had an impact on your learning and work as well. So there are so many changes that happen throughout the lifespan. And for that reason, you need to have a good understanding of yourself and the world of work, and then be able to make informed choices alongside these transitions and changes. So career development really is a process of making choices, and it's a cycle of change and growth that requires resilience and constant adaptation across the multiple transitions you'll make during your lifespan. And it's also important to note, I guess, that your career does not obviously happen in isolation. There's lots of things that have a potential influence on your career. So let's have a look at those now. When we consider our future professions or career choices, we give considerable thought to the types of work we want to do, maybe how much we want to earn in a specific role or industry, what education and qualifications we might need in order to get those jobs. But there are many other influencing factors that can have an impact on our career choice. And these influences can be both positive and negative, and they can be known influences, but sometimes they're also unknown influences and things that we may not necessarily be consciously aware of at the time. So what I'd like you to do is have a look at some of the personal factors that are listed there on the screen and pop in the chat if you feel that your career has been influenced by any of those. And I'll circle back to those in a minute, and Bree can give us an overview of what you've popped there into the chat. So if you think about what some of those, and we'll just have maybe a chat about some of those, and I'll give you some examples. So some might be around your interests. Sometimes people choose to turn a hobby into a career based on something that they're interested in. So sometimes people have an interest in something like sport and exercise science, for example, and so consider becoming an athlete or a PE teacher, a personal trainer, or even a physiotherapist. We see people that have got an interest in numbers, for example, and opt to pursue careers in banking, accounting, or finance. So certainly our interests can have an influence on our career decisions. Gender is another one. I guess time's gone by, being born or male or female would have had an influence on the career choices that you had, in that some occupations weren't open to females. Often, many generations back, women were required to stay at home and rear the children and did the housework, while it was up to the men to go out and provide for the family. And whilst those times have changed and the world of work has changed, there are still some opportunities that may be considered more female dominated or male dominated, and that can have an unconscious impact on your career choices sometimes as well. And sometimes they're seen as more accessible as well by different genders as well. So if we look at a couple of sectors, so registered nursing is an obvious example. We often hear of male students being, I guess, uninclined to pursue a career in nursing, even though they may be interested in it, just because they see it as a female-dominated profession, which it is. 88% of nurses are females. And similarly, sometimes female students choose not to prefer a career in the trades, which can often be male-dominated as well. So you've got a career as a boilermaker, for example, where 99% of the positions are held by males. So certainly that can have an influence, and whilst it shouldn't prevent you from pursuing a certain career, that can have an impact on those decisions, knowing that obviously your study journey may be influenced by that as well. Being a single female in a class dominated by men, or vice versa, being the only male in a class of women may have an influence consciously or unsubconsciously on your career decision and your ability to pursue that career as well. Likewise, health and disability may limit your choices or have an impact on what you can access and undertake. If you've, for example, spent a significant portion of your life unwell, it may have impacted your schooling. So it may mean that your journey through education is a longer one and may impact then on your career choices and what you might opt to do as well. So there's lots of different influences there. Life roles as well as another one that we often see as a careers counsellor, in terms of women often returning to study after they've completed their parental duties. So they'll return to education, or similarly, sometimes people's career choices change over time. So when they become a parent, they may choose to take up a different career option, something that has a better life-work balance that fits in with their family requirements as well. What have we got in there in the chat, Brianna?
Oh, we've got some great things, Debbie. We've actually touched on a few of the things that you're touching on. So Tristan talked about interests and injuries. And it's interesting. I think injuries or like disabilities, things like that, can be one you don't think of. I just on Friday went to go see my massage therapist, and I saw a new massage therapist because my previous gentleman I've been seeing for many years has actually done some damage to the nerves in his hand. So he's retraining in another area because he can't really do that job anymore. So sometimes, those things happen. Lots of people say that it's obviously lots of factors to bias, said that having kids means they don't want to do such high risk jobs anymore, which is a really interesting one. What else have we got? Oh, a few people just commenting on those gender gaps. Angus is saying that he has an uncle who's a nurse, and so do I, Angus. So it's not, lots of men go into nursing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jordan's just commenting that they would like to be a social worker. Interestingly, statistics say that 83% of social workers are female. So
perfect, great
comments in there. But most people, I think, are just noting that it's so many of these factors.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're all sort of combined.
Yeah, there is. And there's lots, and they will impact at different times across your career journey as well. And I think that's the important thing to realise too. We all also have social influences that can include the environment, our families, the media, and the role that they can have an impact. And if I was to relate, I guess, a personal story for myself, when I was going through high school, I never had any intention of pursuing university studies, had never considered that. I came from a farming family, so my parents had left school in their early high school years to pursue employment to support their family. So university was never something that I'd ever considered. We were having that discussion, I think it was probably about year 9 or year 10, with one of my English teachers around what we were planning to do after we finished high school, as I think a lot of high schoolers do, and have those conversations with their teachers. And when it came to my turn, I said that I wanted to go on and become an air hostess because I had an interest in travel and languages. And my English teacher at the time said, well, you could still pursue that. Satisfy those options by becoming a pilot. And I hadn't really given any thought to that idea of becoming a pilot. And whilst I didn't pursue a career as a pilot, probably wasn't up until that point that I actually started to explore other careers that might have required additional training and education. And ultimately, I did end up pursuing a university qualification. So there can certainly be people that influence your career choices and decisions over time. And certainly things like the media, we see that often in a career space as well. I think when TV shows like NCIS were at their peak, we had an influx of people wanting to become forensic scientists or criminal profilers and things like that. So certainly there's an increasing influence, I guess, of media in terms of the information that you receive and how that information is portrayed. That can certainly have an influence on our career choices and careers that we may see as more glamorous than others. Other things that might be filtering through include things like government funding, for example, that can have an impact on some of those things as well. So think back to when you were finishing high school and what your friends were doing and the influences that your teachers may have had. Did any of those things impact on your decisions? Feel free to pop some of those things into the chat. So certainly at any point in time, there's lots of different things that can have an influence on our careers. Would anyone like to unmute and maybe share a story of someone that's had an influence on their career up until to date?
Brave souls out there. Debbie, being an airline hostess must have been the hot thing, because I also wanted to be one when I was at school.
Yeah, it could have been, maybe there was something going on in that time or that, yeah.
Angus has just popped in the chat that his parents have had an influence on him. Tristan has said family and history of relatives.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, family can definitely be a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can be positive and negative, remember, as well. So sometimes there might be high family pressure to pursue a certain career that might be at odds with where your personal values and desires might be, or it could be a very positive influence as well. So it can go either way. So it's really important, I think, to take some time to think about what and whom might be influencing your career, but also to consider the influence that you might be having on others as well, I think, in terms of the conversations that you may have around careers with other people within your life as well. I think that's often an important consideration too. And then thirdly, we have contextual influences. So these are somewhat less directly related to the individual, but their impacts on career decisions can still be profound. Something as simple as where you live can influence the level and nature of schooling that's available, the prevalence of suitable role models, access to information, and the types and number of employment opportunities that are accessible as well. So imagine growing up in a small rural town, for example, and having to travel 3 hours to the closest school. You might have had to do homeschooling or school of the air, or you may have had to go away to boarding school, for example. So all of those things can potentially have an impact on your career choices. There may be an expectation that you'll grow up and take over the family farm or the family business. Growing up in multi-generational unemployment or in a situation of low income families can certainly have a direct impact on your access to schooling and the supports around that, and your experience of schooling in the education system can be very different. Growing up in a remote Indigenous community, again, could limit the level of education that you can access, and your experience of that may then have an influence of the decisions that you then choose. So there's all of those sorts of things that can certainly have an impact and can influence our career decisions as we're moving forward. And some of these things will also change over time as you transition throughout your life. Obviously, our skills are going to change over time, our friendships, the power that we give to different people, the employment market and labour demand is always going to change as well. So all of the things listed, be it personal, social or contextual, all of those things are subject to change throughout the lifespan. And there's also that recursive or multi-directional interaction between all of the levels as well. So, for example, when you're sourcing a new job, you may be tempted to stick with what you know, And therefore your decision is influenced by your skills that you have at that time, your current workplace, but also your geographical location, for example, and not wanting to relocate and move. There's also another factor that can have an influence as well, and that's chance. So chance always has a part to play in the things that can influence our decisions. So although unpredictable, the influence of chance can be quite profound. So chance can be described as an unplanned event that alters one's behaviour. Some also may refer to it as luck, fortune, accident, or happenstance. So it's often about, those ideas of being in the right place at the right time. For example, a chance meeting with someone that may open up a new employment opportunity. Could be an accident or illness that results in a disability and results in having to make a change. Even a natural disaster, and something that we've all experienced, obviously, with the pandemic, which reduces or increases job opportunities within specific industries. So we've all seen that one. So these are things that are out of our control, but can still have an impact on the decisions that we make as well. So what I'd like you to certainly be mindful of as you consider your career is thinking about what or whom has influenced your career decisions to date, and what or whom might be influencing your career decisions as you move forward. Being sure to think about them from both that positive and negative perspective in terms of whether we need to challenge some of those influences or be buoyed by some of those. And also think about the ones that you are aware of now, and maybe even those that maybe you aren't so aware of, and things that could be having an influence that maybe you haven't given any conscious thought to as well. So there's several different theories and developmental approaches to career development and education, but the widely used DOTS framework has evolved from the dynamic relationships that exist between self, opportunities, decisions, and transitions. The process of lifelong career development involves ascertaining values, skills, interests, beliefs, competencies, and connecting these with current labour market needs to remain intrinsically satisfied and engaged in meaningful work. The process requires an understanding of the work options that are available, navigating with purpose, and making informed decisions. The DOTS framework is underpinned by 4 components that are fundamental to career education and planning. So that starts with self-awareness, and this is the ability to identify and articulate our motivations, our skills, and personality as they affect career plans. It's a really vital step, and it's often overlooked, I think, when planning a career. So in order to determine the suitability of specific careers, it's essential to know first who you are as a person. And this step of the process involves assessing your values, your interests, your personal qualities, your motivations, your attributes, your strengths, your skills, and how you prefer to work and learn. The more self-aware you are, the better you'll be able to determine if a career choice aligns with your authentic self. Opportunity awareness is concerned with researching and developing knowledge of opportunities. And this involves developing a greater knowledge and understanding of the career opportunities that are available, and the ability to research these in detail to gain greater occupational and industry awareness. Strategies that you might explore include gaining experience through volunteering or work shadowing, researching labour market information, and informational interviews with people that are already working in a career area that may be of interest to you. And all of these things can help you increase your understanding of occupations and the greater industry. So having a good understanding of yourself and your options will give you a greater ability to both broaden and narrow down your options, and can assist with the decision-making process, including setting some short, medium, and even long-term goals. Decision-making is being able to weigh up the personal factors to make a sound plan. And once you've set some goals, you then need to decide how to reach them. Transitioning involves implementing what you've learned and putting it into action. It requires understanding how to seek and secure opportunities and the steps required to achieve your career goals. This can include several actions, such as engaging in study. It might be about mastering your job application skills, constructing applications for study or work, and engaging in opportunities to develop both personally and professionally. So these 4 components can be cycled through several times during your career pathway, and sometimes it's a constant process as well. So it's certainly not uncommon for people to be working across multiple components of the DOTS framework at any given time. And it's certainly a helpful way to consider your career options to allow you to make informed decisions and review your career plan. And it's certainly not a once-off activity, and it's an ongoing cycle that you'll need to navigate as you move through. And for me, I guess if I was to give you a bit of an analogy, I suppose, as to how I see it, for me, it's a little bit, I'm the cook in my household. So I often see this as when I go to assess my pantry. So for me, self-awareness is a little bit about going and looking at your pantry to see what ingredients you have in the pantry that you need to make a recipe from. And for me, that's a little bit about self-awareness. So assessing what you've already got in your pantry in terms of your interests and values, and which parts of your pantry you want to use moving forward. And then it's about, for the opportunities, that's then about exploring the different recipes and what the items in your pantry might suit and allow you to actually cook. And then the decision making is deciding which recipe you're going to pursue and undertake and cook. And that might then mean then that transition phase is getting into that process of actually cooking the recipe. And that might mean you still have to make a trip to the store to get an ingredient that you didn't have in order to pursue the recipe. Might also mean that you make adjustments along the way to the recipe as you taste it, because it doesn't taste quite right. So you have to add in something else. And sometimes things happen and it just doesn't go to plan at all. And that might mean what the result is ends up being different from what you originally planned, or you might scrap that plan altogether and start all over again. So for me, it's a little bit like cooking for me, if I was to give you a bit of analogy of that process moving forward. And you might think of your own analogies in terms of your career planning and that process as well. So if we were to look at the 4 stages in a little bit more detail, and if we look at the self-awareness aspect and knowing how crucial this aspect is to identifying the right career choices, taking the time to do this at the start of your career planning can significantly impact your job satisfaction and success. So understanding your skills, strengths, weaknesses and interests, as well as your personal values and work environment preferences, can certainly help you identify a good occupational fit. And there's been plenty of research that's been done into what makes people happy at work. And if you're aware of your natural abilities, know what's truly important to you and what you value, then there's a greater likelihood that your career journey will be a positive one. So in order to be aware of your strengths and abilities and to understand and be able to articulate those values and interests takes a certain amount of reflection to develop up that level of self-awareness. And there's certainly many ways to do that. But for me, self-reflection is one of the key parts of that. So I would encourage you to really think about reviewing your life to date. Think about what you've liked and what you haven't liked. Think about your natural strengths, where they have been. Think about those things that really give you energy, those things where you lose yourself in time and you just fit into that natural flow and lose all sense of time, and those things that really give you energy. And also think about the things that you tend to avoid. Or the things that zap your energy. They can be useful to address as well. So, because you want to know the things that you don't want to take forward into your career as well. Think about asking opinions of others in your life in terms of where they see your strengths and natural abilities as well. Because sometimes we underplay our own strengths and skills. So it's important to get the opinions of others in there as well. Think about your past roles in terms of, they can be paid roles, they could be unpaid roles, it could be life roles such as being a parent, etc. And again, think about what you enjoyed, think about why you left roles or changed jobs. Try and identify patterns and common themes. And often those will be things that you will carry through in your career as you move forward as well. Another activity that I like to get people to think about often, because I think it can raise up ideas that maybe we've long forgotten, or themes that we hold on to, or things that are intrinsically important to us, is to think about our career daydreams. So just careers that you've daydreamed about doing over your lifespan. So you can go back as far as you like, to when you were a child and move forward. Or you can also apply the idea of a magic wand. If you could wave that magic wand and there was no obstructions, no barriers, etc., to pursuing a particular career, what might that career be? So maybe, again, we might use the chat facility, Brianna. So if people would like to pop in some of their daydreams that they've had, or career dreams that they have, pop those into the chat while I talk. But yeah, think about those career daydreams and what you would pursue if you could.
Tristan's quick on the mark, who said aerial firefighter,
Oh,
aerospace engineer. All of these are my worst nightmare. I don't like being above the ground, but good for everybody. Well done. Ha, Dean says retired lotto winner. That's a good
Yeah.
one. I like that one, Dean. That's funny. What else? Oh, sorry, my chat's moving around. Angus just said that he's not sure, maybe something in aircon though. So that's fair enough.
Yep.
Inside job. That's a good thing to know about yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Perfect. Excellent. Well, feel free to keep popping things in the chat there, but I'll keep on chatting away about some of the different strategies that you can certainly use. So another option in addition to self-reflection is to utilize tools. So things such as quizzes and profiling tools, such as the Jung typology or the Myers-Briggs tests. These tools can be a great way of thinking about and finding out more about your personality and your preferences for learning and working. Tests can determine your emotional intelligence, your IQ, and can assist in predicting educational achievement. Skills audits can help you identify your skills, knowledge, and experience. Career assessments can also be used to assist with identifying types of work that match with your skills, your interests, or your education. And one of the career assessment tools that we recommend as a means of clarifying your interests and confirming and generating ideas and raising that level of self and occupational awareness is the Career Voyage tool. So it helps you identify educational goals and interests and preferences by asking you a series of questions to create a personal interest profile with some job suggestions as well. But just remember, like all assessments, a career assessment is not a crystal ball, but really just a reflection of the information that you've put into the system. So when used objectively, they can certainly be useful in terms of revealing patterns and preferences and characteristics that can assist in making informed career choices, but need to be considered as part of that whole process rather than as a predictive tool. So within this module, you're going to be encouraged to complete the career voyage to help you develop your self-awareness and to identify career options that may be best suited to your interests and preferences and potentially your study goals as well. In terms of opportunities, increasing your awareness of occupations and opportunities encourages that generation of career ideas. And certainly during the initial phases of your career planning, it's really important to expand your view of potential career pathways to ensure that you're considering as many possibilities as possible. The aim is to come up with as many ideas and career possibilities as you can. And you might consider related roles that you use similar skill sets across different industries or occupations within a specific field of interests. Your awareness of occupations and what you know about them and how you think about careers may be influenced by the location that you live in, your family's work history and experiences, and what you've learned growing up. Thinking back to those influences and influencers. We often don't know what we don't know, and I think that's a key part of opportunity generation is trying to identify careers that we might not have thought of yet. So certainly activities like Career Voyage can be helpful because they will bring up occupations that maybe you might not have considered. So it can be a useful way of generating new ideas. And another activity that you can do that we often think about using, or we do use with our clients, is creating a bit of a concept map or a bit of a brainstorming activity as well. So let's have a go at that. Now, I think this information is going to be up, but we're going to go into Slido. So if you could bring up Slido on your phone or your screen, so slido.com, we're going to be using that login number there on screen. But if I click through, you'll still have the next information, and there's also a QR code if you are using your phone. But slido.com, and your join number is the 333-991.
I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or if anyone else is getting this, but mine's just saying there is no such Slido activity right now.
Oh, is it not
I'll
working?
have another go.
Or there's some people that seem to be getting in. I'm
Oh, yeah.
thinking. Oh, no, we're getting the code going in. See if we get any others typing and if that works. If not, we'll switch over to a whiteboard and go with that instead.
Hold on, I'll try it on my computer. Maybe I've got my phone. Maybe it doesn't like that. No, but other people are getting in. Got 4 participants there. Odd. Yeah, there's a couple of people in the chat it's not working for, so I'm not sure why it's working for some and not others. Odd.
We'll have to rely on our 4 participants to channel all of the thoughts of the rest of us.
They look busy, so that's
They are busy, which is good.
Well done.
People might like to throw in the chat ideas, and
chat.
yeah, we can add those to it as well.
Well, we've got midwife in the chat. I don't think we've got that up there. Yeah. Oh, Brad says it's loaded on his phone, so maybe phone's the go.
All right, so I'm starting to see a bit of a theme here. So we've got certainly lots of health-related careers, which is great. So you've got a good awareness of the different health-related careers. But I want you to think about the health industry overall. So the health industry is a large industry, and there's lots of occupations that sit within the health industry that aren't necessarily health-related. So what might be some of the occupations that you might also find in the health industry that actually aren't health occupations? Biomedical engineer, great. Salespersons, yep. We've got pharmaceutical sales.
Mel's just popped in the chat, managerial and administrative roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Yeah. Sometimes I think it's interesting to try and think about if you were to go into hospital, all the things that you would experience as a patient. So you have people that will have cleaned your room in terms of where you're going to stay. You'll have meals. So there's obviously cooks somewhere in that hospital providing you with food.
You and Mel must be on the same wavelength. Just as you said that, Mel popped chef in the chat. Oh, this is a good one. IT.
IT, absolutely. There's IT people. There's often tradespeople in terms of maintaining and fixing things across a hospital setting or the health sector as well. There's HR people that hire the people into the health. There's accountants. There's even teachers. So often I've explored with people that, so for example, people that may have been pursuing a nursing career and so have strong interest in health, and then for one reason or another have to now consider a career change, but still want to stay engaged in that health industry. And there's actually schools that sit within some hospitals. So being a teacher within a hospital setting is a way that they can then combine their interest in health whilst moving into a new career as well. So there's certainly lots of different ways, and sometimes thinking about those combination interests. So if you've got 2 really strong interests, often a good way of expanding your ideas is how you might combine those interests together to come up with some interesting career ideas as well. So that's a really great effort there today in terms of the different options you've come up with. So let me move on to our next slide. Oh, just before I move on, I guess, just to make note, I guess there's lots of different places, I guess, in terms of, those were activities to generate ideas, but then there's the other side of it, which is to explore the different occupations and finding out more about those occupations as well. So thinking about what happens in the day-to-day, the different salary levels, the salary requirements, the job prospects, etc. All of that is an important part of that occupational consideration and raising your awareness of different occupations as well. And you'll find lots of resources in your study guide to assist with this occupational awareness aspect of your career planning as well. And one of those sites will be Jobs and Skills Australia, which is a website where you can find out more about your careers of interest. And there's a few different other websites listed in your study planner, as I said as well. But there's other means of doing that as well. So I mentioned earlier that idea of an informational interview. So that's about going and talking to people that are actually working in your career of interest. And they can often provide some really helpful insights in terms of what a day in the life is like for somebody in that particular field. And we call that informational interviewing. So it's really about having some prepared questions and some ideas of what you'd like to find out about your occupation, and going and having an intentional conversation with someone that works in a particular occupation. And they could be family and friends, people that you know that work in particular occupations, but having those conversations about what that looks like can be really useful, or reaching out to people that you know within your community that work within those different fields as well. And one of the tools that you also have as a CQ University student is access to our alumni. So people that have gone through and studied in different fields as well. So through our CQ Uni Industry Connect platform, you can reach out and have a chat to previous CQ University students that are now out working in industry in different occupations to find out a little bit more about their careers, and also about their studies with CQ University as well. And you can find the link for that through CQ Uni Career Hub. You might also choose to attend different networking events. So often there might be chambers of commerce or professional associations that run networking events where you can go along and have a chat to people, or similarly going along to open days at universities or career expos can be another great way to network and chat to people that work in different roles and in different sectors as well. Professional associations, I would recommend checking out the professional association associated with occupations that you might be interested in. They will often have really good careers information on their websites, and information sometimes even about sort of jobs that are associated with that particular occupation as well. So it gives you an idea of the typical jobs and the salaries and information like that as well. A work experience, which you may be familiar from high school, but you can also do job shadowing, where you just follow somebody around in their workplace, and even volunteering. And we often think of this as kind of trying on your career beforehand. So just going on and trying it on a little bit through a volunteer role, also undertaking a role in a similar sort of occupation, to get a better idea of whether it's something that will fit you and suit you as you move forward as well. But certainly making sure that you undertake that research and get an understanding of what each role involves will allow you to rule out options and certainly narrow your list down to those occupations that you're most interested in, and can also result in you learning something new about yourself and what you might choose to factor into your decision making as you move forward as well. An important thing, I guess, to think about as you start to explore your career is also being mindful of any barriers as well. So barriers are those obstacles or circumstances that prevent movement, access, or progress. And from a careers perspective, it's essentially the same. So a career barrier can be defined as events or conditions either within the person or within the environment which makes career progress difficult. So barriers may vary in size and significance, but many barriers can be overcome with an awareness or strategy, and sometimes even in time. Some barriers might be obvious and we can preempt them, but some are not so and may occur at any time unexpectedly. If we consider the types of things that might prevent us from achieving a career goal, some of the more common foreseeable barriers might be a lack of knowledge, qualification, or training. So that's something we can obviously potentially do about by engaging in the necessary training. There might be financial barriers such as the cost of study or placement and professional costs. And again, there may be options to overcome those barriers with things such as financial support through government or scholarships. There could be changes in the labour market, so shifts in industry or the labour market for any number of reasons can certainly change. And the pandemic, again, as we mentioned earlier, was an example of that. And there can also be internal barriers that might prevent us from pursuing particular career goals. So a fear of change, anxiety, lack of self-awareness, a lack of confidence, poor motivation. So some of those barriers might also be internal barriers as well. So it's really important, I guess, to be mindful of barriers that can get in the way of our career goals, and researching and being aware of occupations and the requirements to succeed in specific roles can help you make better informed decisions about the suitability of a career and be prepared to overcome any potential barriers that might be in place. Inherent requirements are often overlooked and pose potential barriers to career success or progression. So inherent requirements are the essential capabilities, knowledge, behaviors and skills that are needed to successfully fulfill the requirements of a role, and something you should consider as part of your research and the development of your occupational awareness. So aside from skills and knowledge and behaviors, sometimes there are also industry or requirements as well, and they may be associated with professional registration. So there can sometimes be legal and compliance requirements associated with particular careers as well. So if we were to maybe explore a particular occupation, let's see where you might be able to gather some of that information. And one of the places that you can explore inherent requirements is through the handbook. So if we were to consider the Bachelor of Physiotherapy, by utilising the handbook, we can actually get a better sense of what some of the barriers may be to pursuing this career in terms of the further studies that might be required to pursue that career. So on this first page, the general overview just gives you an overview of the course itself, as well as some general career information. So that's what you can access from that first page. Then if we move on to the Getting Started tab, if we click on the course details, we then get an understanding, okay, this course runs for 4 years full time. So is that a possibility for you? 4 years full time is a large time commitment. So that's 40 to 48 hours per week over a sustained period of 4 years of full time. So if full-time study is not an option for you, this may be, this course may not be available to you through as one that you can consider, but it doesn't mean you have to rule it out altogether. There may be other institutions that offer that course in a more flexible mode that may still make it suitable for you as well, but something that you need to be aware of. If we look at the where you can study the course, this particular course is only offered in Bundaberg, Cairns and Rockhampton. So again, that may influence whether you can access this course. If you're not located in one of those areas or have ready access to that area, that may impact on whether you could study this particular course as well. In terms of what I need to start, obviously for you guys being in the STEPS course, you're already potentially solving this barrier in terms of the education requirements for entry, in that your STEPS course will allow you to meet the prerequisite subjects required and give you an entry pathway into your desired course. But something to be mindful if you're applying for other courses outside of CQU, that whether you would be eligible for their entry requirements, or similarly, if you change your mind in terms of the course that you wish to pursue, you may have to have another conversation with your STEPS coordinator in relation to the units that you need to undertake within your STEPS program to give you that pathway as well. In terms of the course features, this page will give you an overview of the residential school requirements, as well as the practical components that are required within a course. And that can have an impact as well. So this particular course has 5 weeks blocks, 5 of them, of practical placement that you need to be available for. So again, being mindful of whether that's going to be doable for you to pursue this particular course would be a consideration, knowing that that would be, if you're in current employment, that would be unpaid time that you need to be out of your workplace to pursue those placements, for example. Another thing to be aware of that I think sometimes gets missed by a lot of students is that there can sometimes be exit awards and interim awards associated with your course as well. So that's a good thing to keep in mind, so that if something does come up in your course, in your career as you're pursuing your studies, there may be opportunities for you to take away an award for the studies that you've completed up to a particular point as well. That may then give you an alternative pathway into another career or another option, or into employment as well. And then obviously we have those inherent requirements. So this is where, and there's lots of them, where you can scroll through and see the different requirements associated with behavioural requirements, general requirements, ethical requirements, as well as those legal requirements. So here you can see that a blue card is going to be required. You can also see that there's requirements around vaccinations that are going to need to be considered as well. If we scroll down a little bit further, you can see there's some sensory requirements as well. So being mindful that obviously you're going to need to be touching people as a physiotherapist can be important. So if that's something that you're comfortable with, just being mindful of that. Also, that impact, and as Bree's example earlier of a massage therapist and the physical impact on that person and them having to change their career, we often hear that also from physiotherapy, and that it's quite a physical career. So being mindful if you have currently got any physical constraints in terms of your own health, that it may have ongoing impact for you in terms of pursuing this career, but also in terms of moving forward, that it may impact on your own physical health in this career as a longer term prospect, and being mindful that that may require you to think about how you would transition out of that career moving forward in the future as well.
Maybe can I just for a moment stress the importance of these inherent requirements to anyone listening, that it's a really good idea to go into the handbook. I've just put the link in the chat and have a look at these, because unfortunately in my experience in STEPS and as an access coordinator, I have seen students with a career goal in mind and with a degree in mind who've unfortunately come across inherent requirements that they can't meet.
Yep.
And it's much better to know that earlier rather than later in the journey, so you can think of other options or, you know, reroute your decisions or whatever it is, than, you know, getting to the end of STEPS and going, oh, okay, I'm not going to be able to become a physiotherapist or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really important to explore this as much as you can prior, because it can have impacts. And in particular for this one, and this is one that sometimes does come up quite frequently, is in terms of the security requirements. So an Australian Federal Police clearance is required for this particular course. So if you were someone that had a criminal record, again, it may mean that this wouldn't be a career that you could pursue depending on what the restrictions are around that. And I think there's also that consideration in terms of, whilst there may be a requirement in terms of passing that as for your placements and being able to pursue that study, there's also an additional hurdle then when you go to register for this particular profession with your professional association and registration bodies as well, in that they may have different requirements around federal police checks and requirements as well. So there can be sometimes a couple of hurdles in relation to some of these things as well. COVID vaccinations, we saw a lot of impact of that in terms of people being able to pursue certain careers or having that opportunity to pursue certain careers based on COVID vaccination around the time of that pandemic. But that can still have an impact now. So if you were a person that had chosen not to become vaccinated, it may still have an impact on you moving forward. So even though there's been a relaxation around some of that in a lot of states, there are still some areas where it's still mandatory for some healthcare students to undertake that vaccination requirement. So it could still have an impact if you were to fall into that category as well. So just being mindful of that and being ready to deal with that and take that into consideration in terms of your career choices is important. Another spot within the handbook that I think sometimes gets forgotten and can sometimes hold useful information is the more detailed section. Really useful to go and have a quick look in there. There's not always information in there, but sometimes there is pertinent information within that more detailed section. So be sure to go in and have a look at that section as well, just in terms of any additional information that might be listed there. Sometimes it can be in terms of the credit process. So this particular one does highlight that if you were to take a break from your studies, you may not be eligible for credit if it was further than 10 years old that you came back to pursue your studies. But it can be shorter for some occupations as well. So sometimes it can be as small as 5 years, which might impact on your studies as well. So going in and just checking some of that additional information can be really helpful. And one other thing that can be really helpful is you do have planning tools that will take you through to your career, the overall course planners for each individual course. And if I just show you the physiotherapy one as an example, this can be useful in terms of seeing which units have got a residential placement associated with them. So whether that's going to impact your ability to undertake them. So the ones with the single star have a compulsory residential school. So even if you were to undertake that unit through mixed mode or online delivery, you would still have to attend a campus and do a residential school associated with that particular unit as well. So that's just something to be mindful of, and can be a useful place to gather some of that information in terms of when that falls and whether that makes it more doable for you. If they spread out across your course, sometimes if they're all together, it may not make it financially viable for you. So little things like that can be useful to go and explore as well. So, and when we're thinking about barriers, and we mentioned some of the different strategies that you could certainly look at, but thinking about where you might be able to tap into support if you do identify a potential barrier. So obviously there are lots of support services available to you at the university, and I'd strongly encourage you to access those as a means of support and potentially assisting you with overcoming a potential barrier. But you also obviously have family and friends that might be able to help with additional childcare arrangements, for example, picking up children from school, etc., during classes. Scholarships and bursaries that I mentioned in terms of that those financial aspects. Our accessibility team in terms of assistive technologies and adjustments that may need to be made to assist you with your studies or placements. Obviously, our academic learning centre in terms of assisting you with academic requirements, as well as thinking about what support you might be able to get from your employer. So it may mean having to bank, whether they'd be supportive of you banking your annual leave, for example, so that you've got a bank of annual leave available to you when you hit those placements in the latter years of your studies, or being able to access time off to attend classes and study, are good conversations to have right at the outset as well. Yeah, if we move on to the next part, we're up to decision making, and we make thousands of decisions every day, and you may not be completely aware, but your brain is constantly interpreting what decisions have to be made, deciding what constraints there are, and assessing the options that are available and then selecting a course of action. Some people favour an intuitive decision-making approach, such as a gut reaction, what feels right, whilst others prefer a more cognitive approach of weighing up their options. Some people like to consider their decisions by themselves, while others prefer to bounce their decisions around with others. So reviewing how you've made decisions in the past can certainly help you determine your preferred decision-making style. So I'd encourage you to take that time to reflect on how you've made decisions in the past and what's worked well for you, or what you may need to change in terms of your decision-making processes as you move forward as well. So once you've identified that you need to make a choice or decision, you are then more ready to action it, and then it allows you then to analyze the information that you've gathered in relation to yourself, your options, your influences and influences, the potential barriers and your decision-making style. You can then stop to synthesize all of that information that you've gathered and start to narrow down those options as well. So try and consider all of that information and see whether you can start to narrow your options down to 3 or 5 different options that you may need to then explore. If you're unable to do that, you may need to spend some more time in that self-awareness or that occupational exploration stage. So one of your activities in your study guide is going to ask you to consider the pros and cons of occupations that you are considering. So making a list of the advantages and disadvantages is a great way to organise your thoughts and knowledge about a specific job. And being able to weigh up the potential options in terms of the pros and cons to yourself, your family, your community, and even society as a whole can assist you with prioritising your options in terms of their alignment with your values. Another way that you can consider your options is to use a weighted decision-making approach, which is this one here. If I quickly show you this one, you will have access to this within your Moodle site as well. So you'll have a sample, the same sample, as well as a blank template that you can utilize as well. So for this one, it's often about first stage is identifying what your important criteria are and listing them across the top here in terms of your career moving forward. So these are those intrinsic ingredients that you want your career to satisfy in your moving forward. You then weight those on a scale of 0 to 5 in terms of how important they are. So it's about trying to prioritize those criteria for yourself. And there'll always be some things that you're not willing to negotiate on within those options. And so it's really important to identify what those really strong criteria are that you wouldn't be willing to sacrifice. The next stage then is to list out all of your options that you're considering. So the different occupations that you might be considering. And then what you then do is just consider how well each of your occupational interests will allow you to satisfy your different criteria on a scale of 0 to 3. And that gives you this unweighted row here. So how well would you be able to be autonomous as an advocate, have that client relationships as an advocate, having a big office, money, etc., all as an advocate. And then to get your weighted score, this second row, it's about multiplying your weighting of how important that criteria is for you against that unweighted mark, and that will then give you your weighted factor here. You can then add up your weighted and it'll give you a score that you can then assess all your different options by. So if I show you the completed version, so here you can see that we've gone through and we've weighted all of our different options and we've added those up across the side. And here you can see that the strongest one that's coming out in terms of that criteria is the in-house lawyer. So this may be the option that this particular person would choose to pursue in the first instance, being their most desired career, but they've also then got a listing of other occupations as potential options that they may also choose to consider as backup plans as well. So that process can be a really good means of prioritizing your options and allowing you to identify your most preferred option as well as those backup options as well. For me, I guess when making decisions, I consider it really important that you be mindful of that you can only make a decision that's the best decision for now. Things can certainly change in the future. You may further your self-awareness or occupational awareness as you move forward, and that may prompt you to reassess your options. Sometimes things happen and occur in your life, such as illness, etc., that may require you to make a new decision as well. So every decision is a learning opportunity. Each decision that you make takes you down a path that allows you to add new information into what you know about yourself and your opportunities. Remember that career planning is that constant decision-making process. And part of that decision-making process is evaluating whether the decisions that you've made are still the best decision for you and your career as you progress. So when making your decisions, we strongly encourage you to consider what your first or ideal option would be, but also what your backup options might be, bearing in mind that there can often be multiple pathways to achieve the same outcome. Which leads us on to that next phase of the DOTS model, which is the transitions phase. So once you've made your decision, the next step is to take action and implement it. And part of this process involves making a plan on how to get there or the transitions. So goal setting helps us navigate the way from decision-making to action. And it allows us to choose where we want to go by first working out exactly what it is what we want to achieve and where to concentrate our efforts. The more specific the plan, the more effective it'll be towards reaching your desired goal, and being strategic in your actions provides focus. So setting goals to achieve your career dream is no different. By developing up a career plan, you can focus on what you want to do and how you want to get there. Setting goals also allows us to consider how we might overcome any barriers and obstacles that we might face along the way. SMART goals is something that we would encourage you to consider. And it may not necessarily be a new concept to you either. You may have come across this already in your STEP studies. But they are definitely useful and can be used to break up your plan into more manageable actions. So these SMART goals are specific. So knowing exactly what you want to achieve will help you stay motivated until you can get there. Measurable, so being able to quantify your goal allows you to identify what success is. Being achievable, so making sure that your goal is achievable, it's nothing unrealistic or too crazy. That it's relevant, that it's going to fit in with your broader goals and any of your longer term goals. And that it's time-based, so have a set start date and a deadline, that it helps ensure that your goal is achievable and helps keep you on track as well. So here's an example, a career-related example on the bottom. So I'll identify 3 possible career paths I'm interested in. So it's specific, measurable, and attainable by the end of this term. So it's time-bound and help me narrow down career options for the future. So it's relevant. Also, to be mindful of that, the importance of having a right attitude. Setting goals and expecting everything just to fall into place effortlessly certainly doesn't happen. Nothing works unless you do, as the saying goes. So those with the determination to commit to their goals, show persistence and resilience, are more likely to achieve than those that don't. Effort, planning, and good strategies are what it takes to succeed. But certainly if you put the work in and have that belief in yourself, you're certainly capable of achieving the goals that you set for yourself. As we all know, we can make the best of plans, but sometimes things just don't go to plan. Some things in life simply cannot be predicted, and from time to time we need to stop and reassess, and career planning, as I said, is no different. We've looked at career development and planning, and we know now that it's a complex process of managing our life, our learning, and our work over the lifespan, and it's linked to personal change and at the construction of our own identities. We've identified that chance occurrences, along with constant change, can influence our choices and ultimately our direction and our self-concept. So just like the decision-making stage, it can be really useful to have multiple options in the transition phase as well. So having a plan A, a plan B, and maybe even a plan C can be really useful. And having multiple plans doesn't necessarily mean that you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It just means taking stock of your options and being able to make informed decisions and taking revised action to achieve a goal. As we've learned, looking at the DOTS model, we need to be comfortable circling back and looking at things again as we move forward, going back and completing new self-assessments and checking out our influences and checking out how things may have changed in terms of the opportunities around us. Having a plan means knowing there are options, and having a good understanding of yourself and your options allows you to make informed decisions and plan accordingly as you transition through stages in life and your career. The process of career development involves building your capacity to manage your career throughout the lifespan with a strong understanding of the many factors that can influence your decisions over time. In the great words of Dr. Seuss, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose. I certainly strongly encourage you to take charge of your career. You have the resources and supports at your disposal, so please utilize them as you make your future career decisions. There will be a careers consultant in your tutorial on Wednesday, I believe. So they will be available to answer any questions that you have. You can also utilize the Ask a Question feature within Career Hub over the next couple of weeks or ongoing as well. We're always here, but all of the careers team will be available to respond to any of those questions that might have surfaced as you work through this module within your STEPS course.
Thank you so much, Debbie.
My pleasure. And that's how you can reach out to us if you have got any further questions. And we're always available for one-on-one consults as well if you find that, the career planning process in this module results in you wanting to have a more detailed conversation about your career moving forward as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And just to highlight that slide one back about the career questions, we've got a link this week in the week 10 tile, everyone. So if you're looking for that, it's also on Career Hub, but you can find it there. And I honestly can't recommend the careers team one-on-one appointments enough. I've had so many students over the years reach out to the careers team and do a bit of a one-on-one appointment to figure out, even if you think you know what path you're going down, but you're not even completely sure about how to get there, sometimes it just helps to clarify things. And so it's not necessarily just that you don't know, it can also be to make sure you're on the right track. So yeah, sometimes, especially if we've not been in a certain career before, it can be tricky to know the, you know, those specifics of how to get that qualification or go into that particular field. So, well, thanks so much,
Thanks.
Debbie.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for having me, and good luck with your studies, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.